Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Jane Stevens and we talk about free lead gen ideas every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. So thanks for being here. Today's topic is going to be specifically about buyers. So let's jump in and get started. So again, this is a webinar that I am now running every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And like I said, every Wednesday, I'm going to share with you a free lead gen idea. So this is for real estate agents. It works for mortgage agents as well. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself before we get started so you know who it is that you're listening to here today. So if you haven't met me before, again, my name is Jane, and I have been a real estate agent for the last 12 years. I started my career back in Vancouver and moved about 8 years ago to Toronto. So when I did that, it was a big move and I didn't know anybody in the big city of Toronto. So I had to get creative in terms of how I was going to continue to stay in real estate and how I was going to find clients. So again, I didn't have a sphere of influence. I didn't have friends or family in Toronto. So I really had to get creative with what I was going to do for lead gen. And being a single mom, proud of that fact. I've got 4 kids, now teenagers and adults, thank goodness. I didn't want to spend a ton of money on generating leads. So, like I said, I had to get creative with some lead gen ideas. And this is actually a newer idea that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Not something that I implemented at the beginning of my career, although I certainly wish that I would have because it's a great system to get buyers. So, in addition to my experience as a real estate agent, I was also the national training manager for an online real estate brokerage. So that I loved that role. I was training a lot of real estate agents from everything in terms of offer negotiation. And certainly one of the topics was lead gen, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. In addition to that, I was also the recruiter for a leading brand in real estate. So both of these roles really resulted in a lot of conversations for me with real estate agents. And this was something that I definitely realized very quickly is a struggle for a lot of agents where to get leads. Where am I going to find new business? So again, that is why I am offering this every Wednesday, just a free webinar to give you some free ideas on what to implement in your business. So hopefully you find this helpful. And let me just quickly check the chat before we jump in. Okay, thumbs up. Yay, awesome. Okay, excellent. So here's a little graph that I show at the beginning of every webinar. So I strongly encourage you to have 4 different pillars of lead gen. So 4 different things that you're doing consistently to generate leads. And hopefully these are things that you enjoy doing and also, of course, that they work. So this is why I share with you lots of ideas every week so that you can choose what it is that you do like to do, what it is that you want to implement. And I highly encourage you to stick with this consistently for at least 3 to 6 months. So you want to know what's working and what's not, and you want to be able to look back, 3 months or 6 months, look back at what has worked and what hasn't. So we've talked about already a lot of different ideas. So feel free to put in the chat what it is that you do currently have implemented, and I will share with you today what we're going to be discussing. So today we're going to talk about buyer lead gen, and specifically, we're going to talk about one particular system that works really, really well. And again, this is 100% free. I'm going to show you how you can do this without spending any money on ads or, costing yourself any money. So we're going to get started here. So again, in the chat, let me know what you already have implemented as part of your lead gen. Today, we're talking about buyers. And of course, buyers come easily, let's say easily in quotations, when you have listings. So next week, we'll talk about how to generate seller leads, because as you know, when you have a listing, your listing is advertised on realtor.ca, and then you get inquiries from buyers. So, that's definitely a great way to attract buyers, to find buyers, is to have listings. So we'll talk about that next week. Today, we're going to talk about an entirely independent strategy. If you don't have listings, how are you going to find buyer leads? So what I'm going to recommend is that you offer a first-time home buyer seminar. And the reason for this is because it's timely right now, just given the way the market is. It is there are so many opportunities for first-time homebuyers to get into the market. I know that a lot of agents will try to target downsizers. So again, targeting those sellers to get those buyer leads, they'll target downsizers. But right now, if you are talking to downsizers who have been in their home for 10, 20 years, the market isn't at its peak right now. So if they're not in any sort of rush to sell their home, right now, downsizers are a great demographic to talk to, but they're probably not going to be your most immediate source of business. On the flip side of that, you can talk to upsizers. So people who have, homes already that, maybe they've had a baby, maybe they've had, a second child, and just the home that they're currently in is no longer working for them, right? So you can reach out to them, and there's definitely, different ways of doing that. And then, of course, if you are able to help them sell their home, they become buyers as well. So we'll talk about those strategies next week, where to find sellers. But independent of all of that, I am going to highly recommend that you target first-time home buyers. Again, just because right now, the way the market is, there are so many opportunities for first-time home buyers to get into the market. So there's a lot of condos right now that have been sitting for a long time. And, again, first-time home buyers are going to be able to take advantage of those deals. Again, when you're talking to a seller right now in this particular market, they want the best of both worlds, right? They want to sell their home for top dollar, and then they want to buy something that is, affordable, that is considered to be, cheaper than normal. So they want the best of both worlds. So that's why first-time home buyers, they don't have anything to sell. So they're not worried about what they're going to get for their home. They're just worried about finding a great deal on, whatever it is that they're looking for, whether it's a condo or a townhome, or, there are some first-time home buyers who have, a healthy budget, and they can start off with a detached home. So it's a great demographic to tap into. So what I'm going to recommend is right away that you can see a screenshot here of Eventbrite. So again, I've already given it away. Today we're going to be talking about a first-time homebuyer seminar, and I'm actually going to share with you what you can present. So be ready to take screenshots of every single slide so that you can, take the information, put it into your own first-time homebuyer seminar. But in terms of reaching out to first-time homebuyers, how can you do that, right? And again, for free. So Eventbrite is a great platform where you can go ahead and advertise your event. So if you are going to do a first-time homebuyer seminar, and by the way, this would likely be done on Zoom, you can choose if you want to do it virtually, if you're comfortable with technology, or if you wanted to do it, at a venue where it's in person. So regardless of whether you're deciding to do your first-time homebuyer seminar in person or virtually, you want to promote it. And yes, of course, you can promote it on Facebook and spend advertising dollars. But again, the webinar here today that we're talking about is how to do this for free. So Eventbrite is the platform I'm going to recommend. You can go ahead and create an event. And I would recommend that you create an event for at least 2 weeks out. So, if you post an event today and, obviously you're hosting it tomorrow, that's not a lot of time for people to find you. So I would go ahead and create an event for 2 weeks from now. And that way, again, it just gives people enough time to find you, to be interested, to register. And so they can register for your first-time homebuyer seminar on Eventbrite. And again, at no cost to them, of course, unless you're charging. But I would recommend that you have just a free homebuyer webinar or in-person event where people can register. The beauty about Eventbrite is once somebody registers, they're going to get reminders about it as well. So not only are you capturing leads, but you're capturing, but it's automatically sending reminders. So it's not something that you have to be super techie about or super knowledgeable about. All you have to do is create the event on Eventbrite. It's free. Set it for 2 weeks from now, and start watching how many people register for your event. So let's jump in and talk about what to present. So again, feel free to screenshot this. You're more than welcome to reach out to me afterwards if you need any sort of help, but I'm going to share with you exactly the webinar that I put together for first-time homebuyers. So this is specific to Ontario, so there's a ton of information here. As realtors, I know you already know this information, but I'm going to share with you how I laid it out for a first-time homebuyer seminar so that, again, you can just copy it, duplicate it, use it, and even improve it and generate leads that way. So let's get started on what your webinar might look like. So this is something that I created in Canva. Canva does have a free version. I do pay the $20 a month for the pro version, but again, we're
Marilyn
talking
McCart.
lead gen ideas. So Canva is one of those things that is also available to you and it's free. So I just started out with a really simple template. I am focusing on first-time home buyers. So what are they most likely to buy? Condos, right? So I just have a photo of a bunch of condos. This is supposedly Toronto, but it could really be anywhere because it just looks like a whole bunch of high-rise towers. And this is what we're going to be talking about, right? How to buy one of these in this market. So if you guys have seen my webinars in the past, I always like to have my logo. And of course, we have requirements to put our brokerage there as well. So, following all the advertising rules, make sure that you have, something eye-catching to start off your webinar. So let's get into the details of what you might want to present. So again, feel free to take screenshots of this. My first slide is just that specifically. Are you looking to buy your first home? And then I specify the area. So in my case, I try to capture a wide net. So it's Toronto urban and suburban homes. So I'm not just saying city of Toronto. In fact, I prefer the suburbs to show people potential home buyers suburban homes rather than being in the city. But whatever area you're in, pick a photo that represents that area and then make sure you include it on your first slide. And then, of course, your name, your title, and your brokerage information as well is super, super important. All right, the first slide I would recommend having is just an intro slide. So just very similar to what I just did at the beginning of this webinar. Just introduce yourself so they know who it is that they're listening to, what your experience has been, what areas you specialized in. You can add in testimonials here. There's lots of ideas that you can, use and like I said, improve this, this slide deck that I'm showing you here. So do a bit of an intro, but then also let them know who this webinar is for. So again, this one is going to be specifically targeting first-time home buyers. And I found some interesting stats. So again, take what you want from this, leave out what you don't. If you hate stats, don't even mention this at all. But first-time home buyers, interestingly enough, make up 24% of all home buyers. Most of those home buyers are, let me see, I've got this Zoom thing in the way, are between the ages of 26 to 34 years old, but that doesn't mean that's the only demographic. There are first-time home buyers in the 35 to 44-year-old range. So just some interesting stats for your audience to know, where they fit in. It's also interesting to know, yes, there are married couples who buy for the very first time. There are single females, single males, and 6% of recent buyers are unmarried couples. 27%, having children under the age of 18 living at home. So, hopefully those stats make people feel that they're not behind, right? There's definitely a wide range of stats here representing first-time home buyers. So that's an interesting slide in order to say who this webinar is for. And then importantly, I think it's good to ask them if they're ready to own, right? This may not be the right time for everybody. So what sort of things should they consider if they are thinking about owning? So a few things to consider is, do you have stable, reliable income? Do you have at least 2 years of steady employment? Do you have a down payment saved? If they don't have a down payment saved, they're not going to be able to purchase anything. And again, as realtors, I know you know this, but this is just some stuff that I've included in a first-time homebuyer webinar so that they're aware of those things too. Of course, owning a home is very different than renting a home. When something breaks down, you can call the landlord and they're supposed to fix it. Hopefully you have a good landlord. But with home ownership, that's not the case. You have to be prepared to repair anything that might need repair. So you want to make sure that you have an emergency fund, closing costs are covered. You want to make sure that you have a good credit score. So there's a lot to consider when you're thinking about buying. And then making sure that you're pre-approved for a mortgage. So this is also where you can, let your audience know when you're conducting this kind of seminar that you do have mortgage agents that you can refer them to. So if they haven't already done that, speak to your bank, but then also speak to a mortgage broker. You never know what they can offer that might be better than your bank because they have access to different lenders. Just explaining that difference. Again, first-time home buyers may not know that. So just highly encouraging them to be pre-approved for a mortgage, because guess what? I mean, you want these people to call you after the webinar that you conduct, this first-time homebuyer seminar. And of course, you want them to be pre-approved, right? That way, you know you're showing homes to potential buyers who already have their ducks in a row. All right. So are they ready to own? And if they have questions about the down payment, oops, that skipped over quite quickly. Then just having a slide so you have this information in front of you, right? So you don't want to be thinking about this off the top of your head. So the next slide that I would present would be what sort of down payment they need. So of course, if it's less than 500,000, then it's just 5% of the purchase price. If it's between 500,000 to 1.5 million, then it's a structured down payment. And then if it's over 1.5, then it's 20% of the purchase price. So having those numbers in front of you so that you can present them is an important slide. The next slide I'm going to recommend is having some sort of a roadmap, because what we're going to do next after this slide is to go through each of these steps in detail. So I always like to present what it is that we're going to be, what the process is before we dive into the details. So having a high level roadmap or some sort of checklist so that people know what to expect in the coming slides, not only of course in the home buying process, I think is a really important slide to have. So the home buyer's roadmap, this is something that I actually downloaded from a website called Breakthrough Broker. They have all kinds of free resources. So home buyer checklists, everything. They have a ton of materials. So I'll actually put that in the chat if you want to take a look at what they offer. It's, again, Breakthrough Broker. And it just gives you a whole bunch of resources, again, for free. Breakthroughbroker.com, I believe is what it is. All right. So, oops, now let me just get out of the chat. There we go. All right. So, obviously, the first step is to meet with a real estate agent. So, that's what you're doing right now for them. You're creating this first-time homebuyer seminar, again, online or in person. So, they're meeting with you. They're already in step one. You can let them know that. Step two is to get pre-approved if they haven't already done so. You've already talked about that a little bit. And then, of course, once they know what their budget is, then that's when you can start having fun with searching for homes. So you'll set them up on a list. You can explain this process a little bit. They can, pick which ones they're interested in looking at. You can schedule viewings for Saturday or Sunday or evenings, whatever it is that works for them. And then eventually, hopefully they find something that they like, and then they're ready to make an offer. So in the upcoming slides here, we're going to talk about what that looks like. So again, this is you educating your first-time home buyers. What an offer looks like, what the negotiation is going to look like, and what it looks like once they're under contract. You'll also go over some final details and what happens on closing day. So this gives them a high-level view of what it is that they should expect. And like I said, I'm going to share with you these slides because just so you can, again, copy and paste the information, use it in your own presentation. All right, so why is it important to work with a realtor? I think this is a super important slide to share with first-time homebuyers, with any buyer, really, right? You want to make sure that they're committed to you. So obviously, the realtor will know what the search criteria is, their specific search criteria, and help you find that home, help you negotiate the terms, help with price negotiations, help with paperwork. So you could really do a deep dive here and talk to them about what the advantages are of working with a realtor. And even here at this point, you can talk about the expectation of a commitment, right? So if you're going to work with one agent, every weekend for 5 weeks, you don't want to end up using your cousin as a realtor, right? Have your cousin do the showings if that's the case. So there is an expectation of a commitment. That's a two-way commitment. The realtor is committing to them as a buyer, and they as a buyer are committing to you as their realtor, right? So there is some paperwork that needs to be signed. So right out of the gate, you're letting them know that there's that expectation of the buyer representation agreement. All right, so you can highlight some things about getting pre-approved. You can talk to them again about the importance of having a really good credit score, not having a lot of debt, having a down payment saved, having really good income and employment history. So these are important things. So this will make them realize pretty quickly whether or not they can consider purchasing a home, right? If they know themselves, they have a low credit score, or they just started a job yesterday, they're probably not ready, right? But you could even say to them, if you're not ready now, feel free to reach out to me later, and I'm happy to help when the right time comes. So these are the things you need in order to be pre-approved. These are the things you need in order to purchase your first home. So again, talking to them about what it is that you need to help them find what it is that they're looking for. So what area do they want to be in? How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what's their budget? So the budget is going to be determined by their pre-approval, which is why it's so important to get that pre-approval beforehand. Are there any other considerations? Is there a certain school catchment that they want to be in? So again, just highlighting to your first-time home buyers that, you really want to help them find what it is that they're looking for. So you need to know what their needs are versus what their wants are, right? So sure, if they want to have an extra bedroom for guests that come into town occasionally, or they want to have a fully renovated home or a finished basement, whatever those things are, those might be on the want list, the nice to have list, but not necessarily the needs. So if you can find them something, of course, with all the needs and a couple of wants, then great. So again, just another slide for you to share during a first-time homebuyer seminar. And then letting them know that this is where your expertise comes in. So comparing properties. So recently sold properties, features, taking a look at whatever it is that they're really interested in. So if you go out and you show them 10 homes and they're interested in 3, then taking a look at what that property is listed for and whether or not that's priced low to, gain attraction, or is it priced too high? And maybe that's why it's been sitting on the market. Maybe there's an opportunity to get it for less than the list price. So this is where your expertise is going to come in. And so again, this is, I think, an important slide to share with your first-time home buyers so that they know that you're going to let them know whether or not this house is priced correctly, right? You're representing them, not the seller. Which is another important thing to say in a first-time home buyer presentation. Going to an open house, talking to a listing agent that's conducting the open house there, they are representing the interests of the seller. So this is where you come in as the buyer's representative to really educate them on whether or not this property is priced fairly and negotiate on your behalf if possible. So making an offer is another really good slide to have. So you want to highlight what it is that they're going to put in the offer. So the purchase price, of course, so that is something that you guys will discuss together. So what is the property listed for? What are the comparables? And what is a purchase price that makes sense? You don't want to go too low. You don't want to offend the sellers. So let's find a reasonable purchase price and submit that in our offer. The deposit, typically having to be 5% of the purchase price. Make sure you let them know that as well. What's their closing date? Do they have a preference? Do they not have a preference? Again, this is where you can let them know. I will speak to the listing agent, find out if the seller has a preferred closing date. And if it's not important to you, then we can give them the closing date that they're looking for, hopefully, right? If it's not, tomorrow, 2 weeks or beyond that. What sort of conditions are you wanting to put into the offer? So again, letting them know, financing, even though you've been pre-approved, it's important to put in a financing condition if it's not a competitive market so that you can just confirm your financing for that particular property because your mortgage broker is likely, or the lender is likely going to want to do an appraisal. So, and last but not least, the irrevocable, just explaining to them, and this is an important piece, as we all know, I'm sure we've all sort of waited around for signatures for far too long. So make sure that your first-time home buyers especially understand that these documents are time sensitive. So when the offer is prepared, they have to sign it, and then there will be an expiry date, as we all know. So we do have to sign it quickly so that the sellers have time to sign it back within that irrevocable period. So all of these documents are time sensitive. So make sure you're making an offer when the client is available and has a Wi-Fi connection, right? So again, all things to let your clients know. All right, so this is a slide on negotiating. So you might want to go over this. Let me see. So price bracketing, shop below your max budget to leave room to negotiate. Anchor pricing, so make the first offer to set the tone. Lowballing and its risks. Again, I did touch on this in the last slide a little bit. So offering way under asking can offend the seller, and then they won't even want to play ball with you. So, make sure that, you recommend that they not do that. And then the walk away price. So what is your maximum, and stick to it. So, trying to avoid that emotional overbidding if they love a property, know what the max is. And like I said, play within it. Clean offers are, of course, really important. So I would highly recommend having a slide about all of this. So making sure, that the fewer conditions are the strongest offers. Again, making sure that if they do have, the sellers have a preferred closing date, that you give them what they want, especially if you're going to come in with a lower price. Offer timing, make sure that it's not too quick. You don't want to submit an offer where the seller has to, respond to you in 2 hours. So just giving them an understanding of how long they should expect to wait. So usually 24 to 48 hours sometimes, depending on the situation. So just letting them know all the things that you're going to put into the contract to negotiate on their behalf. So again, moving on with your slides and educating your first-time home buyers, what is it that the seller can do? Well, with your offer, the seller can accept your offer, reject your offer, or counter your offer. I think it's really important to let them know that step. I've had lots of first-time home buyers assume that their offer is the agreement, right? Is that there's no back and forth. Well, there is going back and forth a lot of times. Even if it's just an acceptance, you're going to get that back. So make sure that your first-time home buyers understand that. And if they accept, that's always very exciting. What happens next? So the deposit is due within 24 hours of acceptance. So again, make sure that your buyers know this. Of course, they should know this, because if they have all their money in a TFSA or a RSP, and it's going to take a few days for them to access the funds, they need to have those funds available if you are submitting an offer. So that's important for your buyers to know. So definitely an important slide to share with them and to educate them on the process. So making sure that their deposit is available so that they can provide it within 24 hours, and also just letting them know what that amount is going to be, right? So they can expect, to have that money set aside. So it's typically 5% of the purchase price. And of course, as you guys know, that's negotiable, but I would set that as an expectation. All right. Also explaining conditions. So again, putting in and explaining what each condition is. So we all know this, but it's a very important slide to have for first-time home buyers. So making sure that they understand the financing condition. So you do have typically, the buyers have typically, 5 days to confirm their financing with their bank or mortgage agent, whoever it is that they're dealing with. And yes, of course, let them know not to make any big purchases at this point, right? Because it could impact their mortgage approval. So again, something to definitely let them know about. The other condition that is oftentimes seen, not so much with condos, but townhomes, detached homes, is to have an inspection. So again, you can let them know, I have home inspectors that I can recommend to you. It's usually your cost to arrange a home inspection. You can quote them if you'd like. I try to stay away from that and just put them in touch with the home inspectors just in case their rates have changed. I don't want to underquote them. So just let your buyers know that inspections are, typical, and that's something that they can ask for. And again, they'll usually have 5 days. So just again, letting them know the timeline. And where you can offer your expertise is again to say that you do have home inspectors that you use who are knowledgeable, who will, give the straight up information about the property. And also you could even schedule them for them, right? Here's a list of 3 home inspectors. If you choose one, I can have them come in, on day 2 of our conditional period, just so that we have the report back and you guys have time to make a decision before the 5 days end. So conditions are super important to review with your first-time homebuyers. If they are purchasing a condo, then letting them know that a status certificate will be available for them to review, and that typically it's not something that they have to review on their own. This is when you can engage your lawyer to take a look at the status certificate. So again, if they don't have a lawyer, you're happy to recommend a few different lawyers to them. And once they do select a lawyer, typically the lawyer we'll even review it for free, sometimes a $50 fee to review the status certificate. All right. So hiring a lawyer, this is something else that you can help your first-time homebuyers with, and it's important for them to know what the lawyer does. So prior to firming up an offer, we just mentioned the status certificate, so that's what they would be there to do. They would review the status certificate, let you know what's coming up in that building, whether it's in good condition. They can confirm closing costs. And then, of course, after the offer is firm, they can do the title search, prepare the documents, transfer funds, register title and mortgage, all of that good stuff. So lots of information to share with your first-time home buyers. So yeah, like I said, take screenshots of this and implement it into your own first-time homebuyer seminar. Letting them know what the closing costs will be. So there's a cost sometimes for the appraisal. If they do a home inspection, that again is going to be the buyer's cost. What is the land transfer tax and any legal fees? Again, I like to stay away from saying exactly how much the legal fees are. I would just put together a list of 3 lawyers that I recommend, have them reach out and have them ask what the legal fees are. Because again, if they've changed their standard rate, I don't want to underquote what the lawyer will pay or charge. So other closing costs to keep in mind, you can definitely go through these with your first-time home buyers, any adjustments, mortgage default insurance if that's going to be required, new home costs, and title insurance as well. And if they're purchasing a new home, then any HST rebates is something that you can talk to them about as well. So this is a really great slide to have when you're doing first-time homebuyer seminars, because this is unique to first-time homebuyers, right? The new housing rebate, the rebates on the land transfer tax. So all of that is laid out here for you. So again, just a really important slide to have in here so that you can share that with your first-time homebuyers. And then, of course, letting them know that, as you already did, that there are 5 days for these conditions to be fulfilled. And once those 5 days have come and gone, then what are the buyers going to do? Do they want to remove conditions and move forward with their offer, firm up the contract, or not? Right, just walk away. So letting them know that there's some paperwork involved as well. So this is another really important slide to include. So. On closing day, there's some lawyer responsibilities that happen, but really from your perspective, you're going to help with the key exchange typically and possession timing. So that's always an exciting day for first-time homebuyers. So just letting them know what to expect. And that key exchange is different sometimes. Sometimes the lawyer will have it available for them. Other times it's just giving them access to the lockbox. So there you go. This is an example of a first-time homebuyer seminar. So hopefully, yes, I'm just looking in the chat. Yes, I'm happy to share these slides with you. And like I said, if you were taking screenshots along the way, this is the information that I would recommend having in a first-time homebuyer seminar. I think I've covered most of it. I think I've covered all of it. Yeah, if there's any other things that you would want to include in a first-time homebuyer seminar, then absolutely go ahead and do that. But again, for those of you who joined late, this was an example of a first-time homebuyer seminar that you can conduct either virtually or in person. And if you're worried about where to find these first-time homebuyers, where are you going to find them to attend this seminar, whether it's in person or virtually? The first thing we talked about was creating an event on Eventbrite. And again, that's free to do. I would recommend creating the event and having it scheduled for 2 weeks from now, just so that there's enough time for your seminar to be promoted. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you feel like this is something that you can do. And again, going back to, the very beginning of what I was talking about here is I do recommend having 4 really strong lead gen pillars. So if one of those is going to be open houses, if one of those is going to be Facebook Marketplace ads, these are topics we've talked about before. They're available on my YouTube channel. This one is doing a first-time home buying seminar, and maybe this is something you do once a month, right? So if you are going to implement this and it's a seminar that you're going to offer once a month, then I would recommend, instead of doing it for 3 to 6 months, I would recommend doing it for the whole year. Commit to doing it for the whole year, maybe take the summer off, but commit to doing it for a whole year so that you know whether or not this generates results for you, right? Whether or not you're able to attract first-time home buyers by doing this. So it is a system that works. Again, it's a system that is free for you to do. It does take a little bit of work. That's why I've shared with you guys my slides. Again, if you didn't take screenshots of it, feel free to reach out to me and I can send them to you. So a couple of things. My Calendly link is there if you wanted to book a call. we can chat. I can go over this again. I can send you slides. Otherwise, my email, if you're looking for these slides, I can send them to you as well. You can email me at jane@janestevens.ca, and I'll put that in the chat. So I see that there's some comments coming in the chat as well. So let me just see what those questions are or comments. All right. Yeah, for sure. So this has been recorded as well. So this will be available on my YouTube channel. So it'll likely be uploaded tomorrow. And yeah, from there you can take screenshots. And happy to share with you the slides as well. But make it your own. Have some fun with the design. Make it specific to your area. Canva is very easy to use. If you're not familiar with Canva, let me know. We can do a training session for Canva later on. But in terms of generating free leads, this is a great strategy. Yeah, absolutely. So any other buyer rebates that I think I've put that in there, but if there's something that I missed, yeah, absolutely. Adding all of that because that is very specific to first-time home buyers. Yeah, good to have some Canva training. All right, sounds good. Awesome. Well, excellent. So like I said, feel free to reach out to me. If you want to email me, jane@janestevens.ca, I can send you these slides. Oh, and I did say I was going to put that in the chat. Otherwise, this will be posted on YouTube, and you can just take screenshots of the information I've shared. And like I said, if you have other ideas in terms of what you'd like to include in your first-time homebuyer seminar, this is yeah, totally up to you to be creative and make it your own. Awesome. Ooh, I feel like I had lots of coffee today and we sped through that. Let me know if you have any other questions or comments. Otherwise, happy to connect with you guys. Again, just go to my Calendly link there and feel free to book a call. Awesome, my pleasure. Thanks so much, you guys. If that's it for now, then we'll see you next week, hopefully. So every Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, we talk about ways to generate free leads, and hopefully you have 4 of these ideas implemented for at least 3 to 6 months. Awesome. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great day.